Venus might seem like the most unlikely candidate for life due to its incredible heat, poisonous atmosphere, and lack of plate tectonics. But it is possible that life is preserved there, with the atmosphere itself harbouring microbial life. The sister planet of Earth has long been seen as something of a hell world, and for good reason. Surface temperatures are up to 462 degrees Celsius, an atmospheric almost 100 times Earth's, and frequent rains of sulfuric acid fall from the opaque atmosphere, and it's easy to understand how thick the atmosphere of Venus is. The clouds that cover the sky there are far denser than the watery clouds that Earth has. The clouds are made mostly of sulfuric acid, which would at first glance contradict the Venus having life idea. However, biologists studying life here on Earth have found organisms that can tolerate similarly extreme conditions. These potential life forms can use the chemical energy of the clouds of Venus to feed themselves. While the presence of life in Venus's atmosphere is largely educated speculation, there is a clue we have found that might tell us if there truly is life there. Venus's upper atmosphere seems to be littered with a mysterious compound that absorbs ultraviolet rays from the sun. Nobody knows what this stuff is for sure, but some scientists have speculated that it could be a biological sort of sunblock made of sulfur. Titan. At a glance, the largest moon of Saturn, Titan, also doesn't seem very conductive of life. While it has seas, rivers, and lakes on its surface, these are not water, but are hydrocarbons of methane and ethane. These non-water features form and fluctuate during seasonal rainstorms on Titan that are visible from orbit. The freezing temperatures of the surface keep the methane liquid, making Titan the only place in the solar system besides Earth that has stable liquids on its surface. The atmosphere of the moon is dense and made up largely of nitrogen and methane, which is strikingly similar to how scientists believe Earth's atmosphere looked earlier in its life, some 2.5 billion years ago. While the liquid on the planet is not water, water is in fact found on Titan in the form of boulders and rocks that litter the surface of the frigid moon. It is quite possible that this soup of life could result in simple microorganisms, like the ones that possibly sprang up on Earth long ago. A hazy halo of methane can be seen around the atmosphere of Titan, possibly hinting that there are already organisms somewhere on the planetoid producing methane as a byproduct of feeding, but that is up for debate. Europa. The subject of movies and rampant speculation, Europa has long been one of the solar system's best candidates for life. Europa is a moon of Jupiter, and at first glance seems like nothing more than a ball of ice. However, due to the tremendous gravitational pull of its mother planet, Europa is far more dynamic. The icy crust of the planet shifts in plates, similar to the tectonic plates on Earth. But more importantly, the tidal energy received from Jupiter keeps the salty water under the crust of ice liquid, resulting in a moon-wide ocean hiding just under plain view. This ocean, hidden only under a few kilometers of ice, is thought to have been around for the last 4 billion years, and is thought to be as deep as nearly 100 kilometers, which is about 10 times deeper than the deepest oceanic regions on Earth. What makes matters even more exciting is the presence of massive plumes of vapor that erupt from the surface of the moon, implying that there is thermal activity deep below the surface. Perhaps one day, humanity will send a drone of some sort to fly through the plumes and see if there is evidence for life under the icy surface. It's complete speculation, but can you just imagine that there are huge sea monsters swimming beneath there? Sadly though, Europa is constantly bombarded by dangerous levels of radiation from Jupiter, hurting its chances, but not ruling out chances of harbouring life. Enceladus. During the 2017 Cassini space probe mission to Saturn, humanity discovered something dramatic. Enceladus, one of Saturn's icy moons, is hiding a salty global ocean under its fissured icy surface. Not unlike Europa, Enceladus appears to maintain its global ocean via the immense gravitational pull of Saturn, creating tectonic activity on the little planetoid. This internal heating causes the ocean below the icy surface to remain liquid. The moon also appears to frequently eject plumes of water and ice into the atmosphere. the contents of which are mostly water, salt, silica, and simple carbon compounds, all of which are known to be the ingredients of life as we know it. With Cassini's passing, scientists now have an intriguing treasure trove of things to study. Most importantly, the apparent presence of organic compounds containing hundreds of atoms arranged in rings and chains. While not exactly a sure sign of life, this clue is a major one, as these are the most complex organic molecules found anywhere in the solar system, with the exception of Earth. The plumes that push through the ice of the moon likely come from large volcanic sprouts deep under the ocean, which could feasibly be host to some pretty complex life. Life is plentiful in similar environments on Earth's ocean floor, even containing large creatures like tube worms, which can grow to be up to 2.5 meters in length. All of this, plus the fact that Enceladus receives far less radiation, makes Saturn's icy moon a more viable candidate for life than the more famous Europa. Mars. Mars has long been the subject of speculation in regards to the search for alien life. Scientists have spent a long time studying our red and desert-like planetary sibling, and have found a slew of evidence that Mars contains most of the ingredients needed for life to form, the most important of which is water. The surface of the dry planet is etched with channels, implying the presence of dried riverbeds. In the summer of 2018, NASA announced that they had found a 12-mile wide subterranean lake sitting under the icy, southernmost part of the planet by using a powerful radar. Microbes found in subterranean water systems on Earth, and those in comparably dry conditions, like the Atacama Desert in Peru, show that life is in fact capable of surviving in Mars-like conditions. There is also the controversial discovery of a meteorite in Antarctica that dates to about 4 billion years, a time when Mars is thought to have had liquid water and a thicker atmosphere. When this meteorite was examined under an electron microscope, it was revealed that there were a diverse array of incredibly tiny structures all over it that resembled fossilized remains of some sort of microbes. As these subjects have never been fully verified, there still remains a bit of debate on the subject, since some believe that those structures could form without the involvement of life, while others see this discovery as the closest direct visual evidence of life on another planet in our solar system. Most scientists agree that the planet may have had more water and even large oceans in the distant past, but lost much of it to evaporation into space, thanks to its thinning atmosphere. The cause of that thinning is still unknown, but could be the result of large or series of comet impacts, or a large solar flare that by chance missed the Earth and collided with Mars, stripping it of much of its atmosphere. Perhaps Mars only seems so empty because humanity does not have yet the technology or capacity to prove that life either exists or existed there fully. Enceladus. One of the first places where life might be hiding might be under our noses, right here in our own solar system. Certain moons of Jupiter and Saturn have been identified as some of the most likely candidates for harbouring extraterrestrial life. Satellite missions to Saturn and Jupiter have analysed the moons of these planets to observe their chemical composition and environment. They use these points of data to extrapolate how habitable these moons would be for any sort of life form. Of the analysed moons, one of the most promising was Saturn's moon, Enceladus. If life exists on Enceladus, it wouldn't be found on the moon's surface. The moon is covered by a massive sheet of clean ice, estimated to be nearly 40 kilometers thick. Temperatures on the surface only reach minus 198 degrees centigrade, far too harsh for any sort of life that we know to exist. Although these initial exterior observations seem to suggest life could not exist on Enceladus, scientists soon discovered that life may be flourishing somewhere else on the planet, its underground oceans. In 2005, the satellite Cassini, sent to study Saturn and its moons, relayed back information that would ignite the scientific community with excitement. Vast plumes of water were being ejected from Enceladus' south pole into space. These plumes were found to be what composed Saturn's E-ring, but more importantly, they were a clue to the possibilities of life brewing below the surface of the moon. These jets of water vapour suggests that there is a liquid water ocean below the ice sheets. With the vast amount of water present on Enceladus, it becomes much more likely that life could be hiding deep below the surface. But just what might alien life from Enceladus look like? Many scientists believe that deep on the ocean's floor could exist chemosynthetic life, very similar to those that exist on Earth. Chemosynthesizers live near hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, feeding off of the chemicals that are spewed out of these at super hot temperatures. Chemosynthesizers are unlike photosynthesizers, in that they require no light to keep on living. All they need are the chemical nutrients from the vents. These forms of life have adapted to immense oceanic pressure and extreme living conditions, and are often perceived in pop culture to be some of the most alien-like life forms on our own planet. Such life forms could very possibly be living at the bottom of Enceladus's oceans, feeding off of hydrothermal nutrients and living in the shadows, obscured and currently undetectable. Planetary scientist Carolyn Porco was the head of the Cassini satellite mission, and throughout its course until its completion in 2017, she has wanted to take the next steps in the search for life on Enceladus. She says such a study would be a test of one of the ideas about the origin of life, and could change the way we view life as we know it on Earth and throughout the universe. They could end up looking very similar to the life forms we see on Earth, suggesting a possible shared genesis for life in our solar system. There's also a chance that the creatures that lurk in Enceladus's oceans are unlike anything we've ever seen before, suggesting life evolved independently on Earth and Enceladus, and illustrating just how plentiful life might be throughout the universe. Scientists have already made a few mission proposals deliberately orientated towards searching for life on Enceladus. The proposed Enceladus Life Finder, or ELF mission, would orbit around the South Pole to collect samples of the water vapour, to understand the interior marine environment more completely, and to see if there are traces of possible life forms living deep below the surface. However, we are still a long way from executing these missions and finding out if alien life truly has been hiding so close for all this time. Rosettas Comet. On the 2nd of March 2004, the European Space Agency launched the Rosetta spacecraft, with the hopes of orbiting and landing on a comet, more commonly known as Rosetta's Comet. This spacecraft came into the comet's orbit in August of 2014, with the intention of studying the comet in orbit, as well as landing the landing module Philae on its surface. Upon its landing in November 2014, Philae became the first module to ever land on a comet, and commenced its mission to study the composition and behaviour of the comet. This was revolutionary on its own, but no scientist could have anticipated what would be detected. In May 2016, scientists on the mission declared that they had found chemicals which could indicate the presence of microbial life on the surface of the comet. Parts of the crust of the comet were found to be deep black in colour and full of organic chemicals, which some believe were created through the existence of microorganisms living beneath the icy surface of the comet. Phosphorus, an element important to the structure of DNA, was also found, along with the amino acid glycine, most commonly found in collagen, the main structural protein that occupies the space between connective tissues in animals on our planet. The presence of these molecules in such an unexpected place suggests that some sort of microbial life either currently exists or existed at one point on the comet itself. Unfortunately, the lander module was not fitted with the correct instruments to identify if life was truly present on the comet, as it was considered extremely unlikely that any sort of life would be able to survive in the harsh environment of space on this comet. Though the evidence is compelling, it is inconclusive and leaves us with a lot of questions about the comet's composition. If life was shown to exist on the comet's surface, it would change the way we understand how life travels through the universe. This would provide massive evidence towards the theory of panspermia, the idea that life spreads through the universe through natural vectors, such as this comet. Although the conditions of outer space are harsh, we are aware of a few organisms that might be able to survive such brutal conditions. Tardigrades, for example, are microbial organisms that have been observed to be able to survive within the vacuum of space for extended periods of time. Perhaps some hardy microbial organism has taken hold of Rosetta's Comet and is lurking just beneath the surface. With the Rosetta module having been hard landed on the comet's surface and communications ended with the module, we will have to wait for another mission for answers. Shebilski Star. While microbial alien life might be around nearby, complex alien life might be lurking in our cosmic neighbourhood. 370 light-years from Earth exists a star with unusual energy signatures. Nicknamed Shebilski Star, the chemical composition of this star is unlike any other in the universe. In 1961, Polish-Australian scientist Antoni Shebilski began studying the star using spectrometric measurements and observed an unusual number of elements that made up the majority of the star. Elements like strontium, yttrium, cesium, and uranium were observed to be present in large amounts, and even heavier elements like neptunium, californium, berkelium, and even plutonium were found in smaller quantities. These are some of the heaviest and most unstable elements in the universe, and many of them are radioactive. Even more unusual, iron and nickel, elements both typically seen in a star's spectrum, were found in unusually low amounts. Many of these heavy and complex elements have never been observed as part of a star's spectrum, and are hardly observed at all in the natural universe. Stellar fusion just wouldn't produce elements of this size. What could be causing such elements to appear in such large amounts in this star then? Well, two main theories have been proposed about the star. One uses the theoretical motion of the island of stability, a concept stating that when these heavier elements have a magic number of protons and neutrons, they will have a perfect nuclear shell, increasing element stability as the elements get heavier, which is contrary to what usually occurs with nuclear decay. This could explain why these elements are so present in this star, as the half-life for elements in the island of stability can be extended up to millions of years, when their regular half-life would only be a few days or minutes at best. However, this is still purely theoretical, and scientists have no way of knowing if this notion is correct. The other more fascinating theory is that the star is a kind of nuclear waste dump for an alien civilization. Though this explanation may seem outlandish at first, it is entirely possible that an alien civilization would throw such nuclear waste into a star as a way to dispose of it away from their own planet. Perhaps there is some sort of alien society that utilizes the power of fusion to power advanced technologies, and they are able to utilize this star to dump all the toxic and radioactive products of these industries into this star. Aliens may also be making this star radioactive as a form of communication, letting observers from around the galaxy know that they exist through this unique technique. In the book Intelligent Life, Carl Sagan said that aliens might end up salting their stars with heavy radioactive elements, so that observers in the galaxies might become aware of their presence. There is still a lot of mystery that exists behind this star, and many questions could remain unanswered for decades to come. But perhaps one day we might be sending a mission in that direction to see if aliens are truly trying to contact us by way of suns. Planets orbiting black holes. Out of all of the celestial objects in the known universe, few are regarded as more dangerous than a black hole. Black holes are supermassive objects that have become so dense that their gravitational pull prevents all matter from escaping. Objects that enter black holes are thought to be spaghettified, stretched endlessly into the singularity of a black hole. So you may be surprised to know that millions of life-sustaining planets might exist in orbit of a black hole. Czech researcher Thomas Opatany approached this possibility in January 2016, when he and two of his colleagues wrote the paper Life Under a Black Sun. This research was inspired by the movie Interstellar, in which a group of astronauts from Earth utilize a wormhole to explore 4 planets orbiting near the fictional black hole Gargantua. They encounter extreme conditions, such as 1,000-foot tidal waves, on the fictional Miller's planet, as they search for a possible habitable place for humanity to live. But in reality, conditions could be even more extreme. On something as close to the black hole as Miller's planet, Thomas concludes that conditions would be extremely harsh, due to the time dilation caused by the intense gravitational pull of the black hole. Temperatures on the planet could reach up to 900 degrees Celsius, meaning the large tidal waves of the planet's surface would more likely to be made up of molten aluminum rather than water. While these are extreme conditions, it may be possible that a planet in a gravitationally stable position orbiting a black hole could sustain simple and even complex life. Thomas calculates that an older black hole that has absorbed all the hot gases and stars around it could sustain a planet orbiting it with about 900 watts of power per year. This extremely minuscule amount of energy would likely only allow chemosynthetic life to prosper. However, an advanced alien race may be able to harness the energy of a black hole through the construction of a Dyson sphere. This technology would capture as much ambient energy as possible for the black hole to use, generating as much as 3 times the amount of solar energy our sun puts out. Such an advanced structure would make complex life sustainable for generations. While there may be such advanced alien civilizations lurking around black holes, it would be extremely difficult for us as interstellar observers to determine their existence. Black holes distort and bend light, blurring space around it to observers and making it nearly impossible to determine just what lies in orbit around them. So despite all of our efforts and theories, the existence of life around black holes will likely remain hidden to us for many years to come. Maybe one day we will be as lucky as the space travellers in Interstellar, and be able to use a wormhole to observe a black hole and the objects orbiting it up close. Until then, any life existing near black holes will remain a mystery to us. Rogue planets. Rogue planets are planets without a star, moving through the universe independent of a solar system. Some conspiracy theorists believe that one day all life on Earth could be ended by the planet Nibiru, a rogue planet hurtling through space on a collision course that would bring about Armageddon. But what if such a planet wasn't a life ender, but a life preserver? One of the most fascinating possibilities for life existing in our universe is that it could be flying through space on a rogue planet, eluding our astronomical observation and staying hidden as it drifts through the universe. There are a multitude of ways rogue planets can sustain life. One way is in the form of chemosynthetic life. If a rogue planet has any moons, the tidal heating effect that the gravitational pull of the moon would have on the planet could create liquid water oceans beneath the icy surface of a rogue planet. This would allow for chemosynthesizers to thrive near thermal vents at the bottom of the ocean, but life could possibly exist in more complex ways on rogue planets. Some of these planets could have atmospheres thick with heavy greenhouse gases that are able to trap light and heat in their atmosphere. This energy differential would be large enough to sustain complex life on the surface, even without a sun. The massive amounts of light energy can still reach the planet through interstellar space, and with the right atmospheric conditions, life could potentially flourish on the surface. Since there is no sun to provide light to the planet below, and the atmosphere would likely be thick with clouds, the surface of this planet would likely be pitch black. Whatever creatures of the dark developed on the surface of such a rogue planet would look unlike any kind of life we've ever observed before. Unfortunately, it's extremely difficult to detect the presence of a planet without the aid of a star or other celestial body. Though rogue planets are currently very elusive, scientists are developing ways of detecting them, so that their environments may one day be studied for signs of life. Heikki Vanhamäki, a planetary scientist at the Finnish Meteorological Institute in Helsinki, suggests that if a rogue planet has a moon orbiting it, we could potentially detect auroral emissions from the interaction between the moon and any plasma in the planet's magnetic field. With a large enough radio telescope, this would allow for detection of rogue planets up to 185 light years from Earth. But this is a very short range of sight, and there is no guarantee that a rogue planet will have a moon orbiting it to begin with. If life does exist on rogue planets, then it has picked one of the best places in the universe to hide. Port Colborne UFO. This video is pretty extraordinary. It was filmed and sent to me by Justin, who lives in Port Colborne, Ontario in Canada. He caught the footage in May 2017 when he was babysitting for friends. And after the children were put to bed, Justin settled down to watch some TV. Next to him was a huge window, and as he glanced out towards the night sky, something caught his eye. At first he thought it was a plane, or perhaps a firework, but when the light became erratic, he wasn't so sure. He turned on his camera and captured the following footage. You can see towards the end of the clip that a car drives past, and this is when the object disappears. Now it's impossible to say that it's of alien origin, but it is an unidentified object. As you know, Canada is no stranger to UFO sightings, and in 2016, over 1,100 sightings were reported, 4% of which could not be explained. Could this footage fall into that 4%? And if not, then what on earth could it be? The Mariana Incident. Now this incident is an old, but very interesting one. And even after all these years, no one can explain it. It's believed to be one of the first UFO videos ever taken, and was captured in August 1950 in Great Falls, Montana, by minor league baseball team manager Nick Mariana. At the time, he was with his secretary, Virginia, and the pair were inspecting a ballpark when they became aware of two strange objects in the sky. Because they had never seen anything like it before, Mariana decided to film the object on his 16mm colour video camera. He described the objects as being approximately 50 feet in diameter, silvery in colour, and very bright. He also said they appeared to be rotating as they raced across the sky at astonishing speed. Take a look.
This is the Montana film, projected exactly as it was photographed. The objects are moving against a 25 to 28 mile-an-hour wind. This is the film in double frame or slow motion. A slight bounce in the movement of the objects as well as the tower is perceptible. This is due to the handheld camera. The film, analyzed frame by frame, shows the movement of the objects to be horizontal and steady.
The shape, brightness, speed, rectilinear path, steady motion, and separation rule out various forms of optical atmospheric mirages or cloud reflections. The possibility of airplane reflection has been carefully studied and ruled out.
Initially the footage was only seen by family and friends, but one of the local newspapers got hold of it, and the US Air Force's UFO investigation team, known then as Project Grudge, were notified, who then contacted Mariana for permission to investigate the footage. Virginia was also contacted, and the pair gave statements about what they saw. Mariana reluctantly handed over the footage. However, when it was returned, he claimed that most of the important frames of the film were missing, the frames that reportedly showed the object rotating as they flew across the sky. He was also given a straightforward response by investigators about what they thought the objects were, telling him his film showed nothing more than reflections of fighter jets that were in the area at the time. However, it didn't stop there, and over a period of 20 years, the footage was officially investigated a further 3 times, with varying conclusions on what the objects might be, although all with no conclusive answer. This makes the Mariana UFO incident one of the most compelling and largely forgotten UFO incidents of all time. What do you think it was? Paris UFO. This next sighting was reported to be over Paris in April 2017 and spread around the UK tabloids after it was posted on YouTube by a great channel, Secure Team 10. Allegedly the footage was sent to them by a viewer and little else was known about it, although the object has been compared to similar sightings over China in 2010 and the Gold Coast in Australia in 2014. I have included it in this video mainly because there seems to have been little follow-up or investigation into what it might be, and the person who originally sent it in to Secure Team 10 has never come forward or spoken more about it. If any of you can shed any light on the footage or witnessed the sighting, I would love to hear more from you. Paris is a big place, and if this incident did occur, then many others surely would have witnessed it. If it is real, then it's amazing. However, there is of course some doubt, as it looks a bit too good to be true. What's your thoughts? UFO over Stara Zagora. This UFO clip was posted to Reddit in February 2016. It didn't get much attention, but the guy who recorded it was adamant that it wasn't fake. The object was filmed over the city of Stara Zagora in Bulgaria on the 29th of February 2016 using a cell phone camera, and the man was so convinced of what he saw that he submitted the footage to MUFON. It appears to show bright yellowy orange lights described as 5 times bigger than the biggest star in the sky. They seem to be slowly appearing and disappearing, maybe because the object is rotating. It moves slowly, then fades, before disappearing completely and not reappearing. Take a look. Apparently, the object was witnessed by several other people that night, who were in Stara Zagora over a period of around 30 minutes, between 7:30 and 8 PM. But apart from that, not much more is known about it. What's your take on it? UFO sighting in Scotland. This next one was found on the British Earth and Aerial Mystery Society website, an amazing site where reports of British UFO sightings are posted. There are thousands on there, but this one I found particularly interesting. It was captured by a lady who was walking her dog with her children and a friend in Maddiston, Falkirk in Scotland. It was around 9:30 PM in August 2017, and as it was British summertime, it was just getting dark. But you can clearly see 2 lights, one being brighter than the other. The witness said the light appeared to be hovering, and there was no distinct sound of an aircraft or helicopter. She also said the light was so much brighter than it can be seen in the video clip. Take a look.
The other one's appearing again. That is not normal. That is not planes.
This is getting creepy.
That other one's gone again. See? It's like a white ball.
It's a bit orange.
Through in there, isn't it? This is serious weird.
Yeah, when you look at
But if that was a... Oh.
Maybe it's a meteorite.
Oh my word, look at it glowing.
Can't be a meteorite, okay? I don't want to die.
And look, it's went dull again.
It's going smaller, look. It's getting smaller.
That other one keeps dotting about in the clouds, doesn't it? Oh my word, look at that! That is not planes or anything else. No, never ever. And they wouldn't go into clouds like that low down.
The brighter of the 2 objects seemed to move away before reappearing and hovering and glowing, moving near to the other light before fading into the clouds. Not much more information is available than what I have said, but it's pretty interesting footage that hasn't been seen by many. That's certainly not to say it's of alien origin, but I'd love to know what you think it could be. 2014 Houston UFO. In late summer of 2014, multiple residents of Houston, Texas, witnessed a series of circular lights appearing in the stormy evening skies overhead the nearby suburbs. The weather had been noticeably hostile during the humid dog days of August, but could not be blamed for the lights Houston citizens captured. On August the 11th, the day before the mass sightings occurred, Andrew Penner recorded a quick video of high-flying light patterns grazing the clouds over Houston highways. Although some have claimed it to just be a reflection on the window, given the many sightings reported the very next day in this area, this footage may have some credibility. Take a look. While local news stations claimed the UFO to be simple industrial freeway light posts, the Vice President for Astronomy at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, Dr. Carolyn Sumners, claimed the possible flying object would need further research. To date, it seems no more information about the video or the case has been brought forward. The Oahu Light Belt. Imagine getting up in the middle of the night for a drink of water, only to find yourself distracted by incredibly bright lights dancing in the midnight darkness out of your window. That exact scenario happened upon Mashhad High of Oahu Island, Hawaii, in September 2017. Take a look and see what you think.
This video from one of our viewers, Mashhad High. He said he woke up at about 2:30 this morning, get a drink of water, and this is what he saw in the sky. Certainly caught his eye. He took the video from Kaka'ako and thinks the lights were over central or west Oahu, hard to tell from his vantage point. As you can see, the two bright lights, and then slowly a third light appears. Hatai believes he saw about 8 to 10 of the lights total. He says he believes, at least he thinks, they're probably flares.
It looks like flares. Definitely could have been taken as something more mysterious. But yeah, it's definitely probably just flares, military flares. Definitely really unusual to see. They were super bright. I guess I couldn't really get the full gist of it with my camera since it was so far away, but it was really, really bright. I mean, I looked out my lanai and it was literally the first thing I saw.
Both MASH and the reporting news station claimed the lights to be military flares and effects from training exercises. And while the US Army confirmed they were active that night, they didn't confirm either the amount of illumination rounds used or the location of their training. MASH saw about 10 lights altogether, but 3 shining in the video are most important, because of similarities they share with the next video. The light show at Naga Port. 3 years before the incident in Oahu, an incredibly similar band of lights appeared over Naga Port in Japan in the beginning of 2014. Take a look.
It's すごいね。増えた増えた。おお。うん。今度は県庁の上に映ってる。すごいびっくり。なんだろうあれ。さっきはロージーの上だったわけよ。いや、これ見たことない。UFO かもな。今ちょうど映してるよ。嘘でしょ。だからよ。県庁の上に来た。飛行機飛ぶよ。
Notice at the beginning how 3 of the bulbs look identical to the 3 lights over Oahu. Both the US and the Japanese military denied any military training that night, and experts ruled out the possibility of astronomical phenomena. So it leaves you to wonder, how could such events be ruled as completely different things, yet look almost exactly alike? The Naga port footage most certainly isn't a hoax, as the witnesses in the background sound genuinely curious, and other citizens also claimed witness. Both light shows also occurred on islands in the Pacific Ocean, which opens up all kinds of conspiracy theories. During the evening hours of February the 27th, 2009, in Middelburg, South Africa, several witnesses captured a steady steamroll of red-orange lit objects flying high over residential Middelburg towards Witbank. The incredible altitude of the UFOs allow for disappearance behind the cloud coverage. 2 pieces of footage are available, taken by 2 friends in different areas. Although the footage is not much to go by, and it's hard to tell what is going on due to camera movement, it adds credibility to the many reports and witness testimonies. Take a look.
Oompie, gaan gou buite kyk kom op die stoep nee. Hier na Witbank se kant toe. Hier's 'n rooi ligte, wat sterre lyk hulle beweeg hier bo in die wolke. Dis die snaakste goed. Ja, ek gou begin op dit. Ja, Anton, kyk gou bokant hierdie rand. Rigting Witbank. Hier's 'n rooi lyk so sterre in die lug, maar daar's klomp. Hulle beweeg stadig. Jy moet dit sien. Ek weet nie wat dit is nie hoor.
The lights were never fully explained by authorities, which leaves the witnesses and viewers to speculate what kind of object could create such a unique display of light and movement. What's your thoughts? The 1990s Stonehenge energies. On May the 7th, 1990, record producer David Tickle stopped amidst a leisurely drive to photograph the famous standing monument at Stonehenge and its surrounding fields. What he captured, however, no one has yet to explain. Overhead were intermittent white objects coming in and out of the blue sky in a flashing sort of manner. If you look closely, black objects pop in and out right on top of the actual barrow, in time with the UFOs in the sky. Take a look. Experts have had a difficult time pinpointing the source of such phenomena. Researchers have mentioned Stonehenge's positioning along ley lines, also known as geoenergy lines, places with subtle magnetic force. Could Tickle have recorded the first ever proof of ley energy manifestation? Or is Stonehenge a unique ground for life not home to Earth, using it as a means of communication like so many have previously suggested? Although tests have been done, and we know a lot more than we used to, no one really knows who or what formed the standing stones. And it's still a long-standing debate. It's fascinating to think that given all the alien talk surrounding ancient structures, such as Stonehenge, that a UFO has been spotted there. So that's 5 UFOs caught on video. Now remember, UFO simply stands for unidentified flying object, so something that you may not be able to identify. That does not mean alien. An aeroplane would be a UFO to a child who does not know about aeroplanes. However, after all the theories have been stripped away from a UFO sighting, and they have been witnessed by multiple people who all have no idea what they've witnessed, that is when things get interesting. Technologically advanced civilizations are very rare, perhaps only 2 or 3 per galaxy, and they're almost always too far away from each other to be heard. This seems very plausible. After all, our galaxy is approximately 105,700 light-years in diameter. But if, as is commonly noted, the first electromagnetic signal on Earth that was strong enough to penetrate our ionosphere and actually leave the planet, it would only have to travel 83 light-years, and its signal would have degraded according to the inverse square law. At this scale, distance becomes time, and thus it's difficult to define what we mean by existing at the same time. As has been pointed out, it's not just a matter of where they are, but also when they are. By this reasoning, a civilization only 200 light-years from us would have broadcast a signal 200 years ago that would be so weak by now that we couldn't even find it in all the background noise. If 3 civilizations of the type we are talking about were each separated from each other by 50,000 light-years, they wouldn't be able to hear each other unless one of them was broadcasting with a lot of power, had amplified the signal and aimed it at a specific location. We could do that for a few hundred light-years right now if we tried, but where would we aim it? And who would try to aim anything at us unless they somehow already knew we were here? For instance, in 2014, Michael Garrett of the Netherlands Institute of Radio Astronomy suggested that there could be approximately 3,000 advanced civilizations in our galaxy, but they would all be separated from each other by an absolute minimum of 1,000 light-years, perhaps much more. But 3,000 technological societies scattered among the 250 billion stars in our galaxy would not be easy to find, and they might be dead by the time we heard from them. What we do know is that our immediate vicinity of the galaxy isn't screaming with technological civilizations beaming powerful radio signals at us, and they would have to be aimed directly at us, either deliberately or by chance, for us to even have a chance of receiving them. Another important thing to consider is that advanced technological civilization may not use radio at all, and may have come up with their own communication systems that at present we cannot detect. The Great Filter. This one is not a cheery notion. According to this idea, technological civilizations will eventually hit a massive crisis that will, if not wipe out the inhabitant of the planet, will so damage life on the planet and the civilization on it that the civilization's technological capabilities will be completely destroyed, or at least so severely degraded that it suffers a catastrophic collapse. This could be self-inflicted, such as nuclear war or some other type of war, or so polluting the planet that their civilization collapses. Or it could be from natural causes, such as extreme gamma-ray bursts from, if not its own star, a nearby star. We know this latter phenomenon occurs because we've detected it. Stars within our galaxy, and in other galaxies as well, seem to erupt in a sudden and massively powerful gamma-ray burst, in which they can emit in 10 seconds as much energy as our own Sun is expected to emit in its entire lifetime. These stars, called Wolf-Rayet stars, are rare and very hot, and there is one in particular which seems to be showing some ominous signs, called Apep, after an enormously destructive Egyptian god of chaos. It's only 8,000 light-years away from us, and there's no telling when it may erupt. These gamma bursts may have other sources as well, such as neutron star collisions. What is interesting to note is that all of these various catastrophic events, whatever they may be, are what is known as a great filter, and according to the theory, few if any civilizations or even planets survive them. It's possible that every civilization eventually faces a great filter event of its own, and either survives it or not. We may have passed through several already, among them being the asteroid that hit what is now known as the Yucatan Peninsula 66 million years ago, and wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs and a lot of other life forms. It was just our luck that we weren't here yet, and this event in fact certainly paved the way for our own evolution. And there was also the devastating Permo-Triassic extinction about 252 million years ago. What caused it is still very much unresolved, from multiple impacts to volcanism, from volcanism to a runaway greenhouse effect due to the sudden release of methane from the ocean floor. Estimates suggest that up to 96% of all marine organisms and 70% of all terrestrial organisms became extinct. It's interesting to note that among the terrestrial casualties were the therapsids, a group of mammal-like reptiles that dominated the Earth, and their extinction, except for a few very tiny descendant mammals, gave rise to the dinosaurs. Perhaps that was our mammalian great filter, and we've just squeaked through. Maybe we've already passed through the great filter and survived for now, whereas other civilizations may not have been so lucky. There is no one else. This is possible, of course, but some people find it unfathomable. We aren't just talking about the evolution of life. Many people expect to find some form of life somewhere else in our own solar system. Many people think that we've already discovered indirect signs of life on Mars. In 1976, with the Viking landers and the labelled release experiment, which seemed to detect metabolism in the Martian soil. Several meteorites from Mars also appear to show some evidence of biology. But it's not just proof of life we are looking for. We're talking about the evolution of a technological civilization that has discovered and mastered electromagnetism, turned it into a means of communication, and has decided to use it for interstellar communication. This is a totally different proposition. Earth, at 4.6 billion years old, has developed a bewildering array of life forms, and there is no doubt now that quite a few of these show definite signs of obvious intelligence of various degrees and types. But humans are the only ones who have gone through the steps required to communicate with other planets. Is this because such a means of communication is rare on every planet? Is it because only one intelligent technological lifeform can dominate and develop such technology, and we are it? On Earth, it's not just a matter of intelligence, but also environmental adaptations. For example, aquatic life can't aspire to reach the stars if they can't study them. And similarly, animals, however intelligent they are, wouldn't be able to communicate on the level needed to contact other civilizations. So maybe it's not a case of whether life exists on other planets, more a case that they have not evolved enough to the level needed to make contact, meaning at present we are the only technologically evolved civilization in the universe, capable of interstellar communication. Perhaps we've already heard them. The universe is bizarre, still almost completely unknown to us, and is full of very strange things. Among these strange things are many unidentifiable electromagnetic signals. So many, in fact, that astronomers cannot keep up with them. Some, like fast radio bursts, are now being studied and detected from virtually every direction in space. These are apparently coming from other galaxies, sometimes as distant as 3 billion light years away. There have been over 20 detected, including 2 that repeat, and 14 per year are now being detected, and some estimates put their occurrence at 1 per second, from all over the observable universe. They last only milliseconds, and are only detected after the fact in recorded data, but they are regarded as not at all likely to be from alien civilizations. First because they contain as much energy as a sun-like star emits in about 10 years, and second because there are so many of them. But there are 2 strange signals that bear consideration. The first, detected in 1977, has been immortalized as the WOW signal, named after Jerry Emmon, a volunteer whose job it was to review the result of sky surveys at the Ohio State University Big Ear Telescope, scribbled on the computer printout when he saw it. It was a signal that lasted 72 seconds, increasing in strength for 36 seconds, and decreasing for 36 seconds. Since the Big Ear was a stationary telescope that swept the sky as the Earth rotated, this was a good indication that the source was not a satellite in Earth orbit, but rather something from beyond Earth. Unfortunately, it did not repeat. In 2017, it was hypothesized that a comet, or perhaps 2, that had been in that vicinity of the sky right around the time the signal had been detected, may have somehow caused it. This claim was debunked when subsequent analysis showed that the comet or comets hadn't been in the correct position, and the signal didn't match any known comet emission. The origin of the WOW signal remains unknown. More recently, in 2010, a signal was detected that bore all the characteristics of an interstellar beacon of some type. Unlike the WOW signal, it was tracked in real time. And also, unlike the WOW signal, it didn't originate in a relatively blank region of the sky, but rather seemed to originate in the vicinity of a star known as TYC 1220911, a star known as a yellow G2V star, almost identical to our own sun, but older. It's 100 light years away, but again, it was never heard from again, and so no one knows what it was. We are just too young at the moment. This is a novel idea, suggested in just the past few years. It argues that even though the universe is 13.78 billion years old, it is unimaginably vast, and life depends on the synthesis of elements heavier than just hydrogen and helium. There has to be carbon, iron, and phosphorus, and a range of other elements important to life, that are created only in the death throes of exploding stars. How long would these elements take to disperse throughout the universe? Well, no one really knows, and it may be that we are in fact one of the first technological civilizations to have developed, just by the chance distribution of these vital elements in our galaxy. Others may, and perhaps will come in time, but for right now, we are the only harbingers of technological life, and no amount of technology, speculation, or conspiracy theories are going to change that anytime soon. What do you think? The Headless Spaceman. At first glance, this little stone artifact looks like a carving of some sort of ship, with a cone-shaped nose, a set of what appears to be 4 rocket engines at the rear, and a pilot in the centre, although the pilot is missing its head, probably due to years of corrosion, and looks to be sitting in a fetal position, wearing a ribbed bodysuit, complete with boots, gloves, and what might be a breathing apparatus at its chest. This curious carving, dubbed the Headless Spaceman, was said to have been excavated in 1973 from the ruins of an ancient city known as Tushba, located in the Van province of modern-day Turkey, near the border with Iran. Tushba was once the capital of the kingdom of Urtu from the 9th to the 6th centuries BC, which would date the artifact at upwards of 3,000 years old. Adding to the mystery, a massive fortress known as the Van Citadel, which overlooks the ruins of the ancient city, shows evidence of Cyclopean masonry. This kind of stonework uses no brick and mortar, and instead uses massive boulders and large stones, carefully fitted together to construct large, defensive fortifications or large structures. Cyclopean masonry is commonly found in areas suspected to have been visited by extraterrestrials in the ancient past, such as Egypt, Greece, and Peru. After its discovery, it was generally agreed that the Headless Spaceman had been given to the Istanbul Archaeological Museum by an antique merchant, where it was kept hidden away in the preservation unit because the museum curator assumed it was nothing more than a hoax. However, this didn't stop a leading authority and scholar on the ancient astronaut theory, who in 1997 tracked down the whereabouts of this mysterious artifact and convinced the curator to unveil it to Western media. The Headless Spaceman soon made headlines in the United States and across Europe, but the excitement was short-lived when in 2003 scientists concluded that the Headless Spaceman was no more than 25 years old and made from simple plaster and marble dust. Despite this, it hasn't stopped many from believing it to be a genuine piece of history that ultimately proves life from another world may have visited us in the ancient past, and this has been covered up by saying that it is no more than 25 years old. What do you think? The Baghdad Battery. In the early 1900s, many scientists from the most prominent empires of Europe were excavating ancient cities looking for proof of biblical relics. And whilst there are differing opinions on how this item was discovered, it's widely agreed German archaeologist Wilhelm Koning unearthed it in 1938 at an excavation site just outside the modern city of Baghdad in Iraq, and he believed it to be an ancient battery. After he examined the 5-inch or 13-centimeter long vessel, he found it contained an iron rod encased in a copper cylinder, as well as traces of an acidic agent, which he assumed could have been wine or vinegar. However, just as he emerged to publish his findings, the Second World War broke out in Europe, and the discovery was quickly forgotten. But long after the war had ended, the Baghdad Battery was rediscovered and carefully examined by scientists. it was estimated that the battery was produced sometime around 200 BC. After the discovery, several replicas were made, and when tested, could generate between 0.8 to nearly 2 volts of electric power. Although this voltage may seem insignificant by modern standards, if multiple batteries were connected to one another by a wire, this theoretically could generate a much higher voltage, although no wires have been excavated to support this idea. Debate continues over the purpose of the battery. Some think it could have been used for medical purposes, to dull physical pain or discomfort, although there's no evidence to suggest this, as it was well recorded in the ancient world that cannabis and opium were relied upon as painkillers. Others believe the battery may have been used for religious rituals, and the battery was placed inside of a hollow idol or statue, and when touched would produce a very small shock, fooling the individual into believing it was a divine experience. Today, most archaeologists agree that the Baghdad Battery is not a battery at all, and that the vessel and innards resemble other artifacts found in nearby excavation sites that were used to store scrolls. They also claim that the acidic substance found within the vessel could easily be the disintegrated scrolls that were once housed within. But have they got it wrong, and could the Baghdad Battery have actually been used to generate electric power? And if so, how did the ancients acquire the knowledge to produce it, and for what purpose did they need it? You decide. Sanskrit texts. The subcontinent of India has one of the richest cultures in the world, with a vast history that spans over 9,000 years. Some of the oldest surviving texts are known as the Sanskrit epics, which contain stories and poetry, and is the central aspect of Indian culture. But there is one in particular that, if read with a 21st century lens, seems to describe the use of aeronautical technology in detail. Among the very oldest of the Sanskrit texts, dating back to nearly 4000 BC, is the Vedas, which comes from the word Veda, meaning knowledge or wisdom, which is then subdivided into 4 categories. Each of these categories contains different writings on mantras, rituals, sacrifices, ceremonies, meditation and worship. And among the spiritual knowledge can be found what is described as flying chariots or palaces, known as the Vimana. It is said that these flying machines could carry an occupant or occupants through the air, and were considered aerial thrones. Some described them as 7 stories tall. Smaller Vimana were described with wings, taking on the heavenly shape of an eagle, and could be piloted by one person. In this section of the text, there are what are named as 32 secrets of working a Vimana. Some of these secrets include how to properly operate the switches of the Vimana, the differences in altitude within the atmosphere, how to camouflage it whilst it's in the air, how to paralyze enemy Vimana, and what to do in case of an onboard fire. There are even texts suggesting that the pilots of the Vimana aircraft were capable of what we today would call radar and radio communication. It's documented that when the Vimana aircraft took off, they followed smoke and fire. It could ascend and descend vertically and travel through the air at great speed. There are also passages about these ancient aircraft equipped with advanced weaponry. One of the Sanskrit texts, the Mahabharata, details an observation of such weapons in use, stating this: "It was an unknown weapon, an Aya thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Andakas. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. Hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. To escape from this fire, the soldiers threw themselves in streams to wash themselves and their equipment." To the modern reader, this description is reminiscent of the effects of the nuclear bombs used on Japan in 1945. Strangely enough, there are also traces of high levels of radiation in remote ancient sites such as the Mohenjo-Daro in modern-day Pakistan and Rajasthan in India. How could ancient people who lived thousands of years before the supposed invention of the aeroplane have acquired knowledge of advanced aeronautics? And could they have had the tools necessary to build the Vimana themselves? What do you think? Gate of the Sun. There are many ancient structures across the world that are shrouded in mystery, from the pyramids of Egypt to Stonehenge in England. Hundreds of people have dedicated their lives to uncovering the enigmas that riddle these places of wonder. But for now we take a look at one of the lesser known ancient structures that may shed light on the ancient astronaut theory. In the 1500s, Spanish explorers discovered a magnificent stone monolith in the shape of an archway or gateway. It is located on the western edges of Bolivia, almost 13,000 feet above sea level, at the site known as Tiwanaku. It stands 9.8 feet tall, 13 feet wide, and is estimated to weigh almost 10 tons. Carved near the top are 48 squares. 32 of them are effigy carvings that have human faces, while 16 have the head shape of a condor. All of them appear to have wings and surround a centerpiece of what archaeologists have considered to be a sun god, due to 24 rays expanding from the figure's head. There is debate among scholars about how old the Gate of the Sun is. Some suggest a more conservative estimate of around 3,000 years, while others claim it was built 14,000 years ago. There is also the debate about its purpose. Some advocates of the ancient astronaut theory believe it could be a calendar for another planet. Others think that it isn't a calendar about time at all, but instead depicts the movements of the Earth in relation to the universe. It was determined that the people who once lived there were capable of advanced mathematics, insofar as calculating the Earth on its axis, and could accurately predict the coming of eclipses, no matter the side of the hemisphere. According to the book Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Daniken claimed there is a local legend about the mysterious city. He writes, it tells of a golden spaceship that came from the stars. In it came a woman whose name was Oriana. To fulfill the task of becoming the great mother of Earth, Oriana had only 4 fingers, which were webbed. Great Mother Oriana gave birth to 70 Earth children. Then she returned to the stars. He confirms this legend after finding rock drawings at the city that depict beings with 4 fingers. The Book of Genesis. No video discussing the ancient astronaut theory would be complete without some mention of the Bible, and a few of the peculiar passages within it. While we could make an entire video dedicated to the ancient mysteries of the Bible and other religious books, for now we're going to be looking specifically at a few quotes from the Book of Genesis. This is not to offend anyone or their beliefs, it's just to highlight a different interpretation of what was written hundreds of years ago. The Book of Genesis is the biblical story of creation, which tells of God as a spirit within an empty void of nothing, where he calls into being light, the sky, the world, and everything on and around it. With Genesis 1:26, we find this quote, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness." This raises the question, why would a singular deity speak in the plural? Could God have been just one of many who visited our ancient ancestors and helped humanity by advancing us forward through the use of genetic or technological means? Further on, in Genesis 6:1-2, we find this quote, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they choose." It is later said that the children born to those coupling were great heroes of old, renowned for their skill as warriors. If we interpret this passage through the ancient astronaut theory, we find ourselves wondering if humans and beings from space interbred and conceived some sort of hybrid race, or could it have been an ancient metaphor for genetic experimentation? Lastly, we would like to talk about Genesis 19:1-28, which may relate to what was recorded in the Sanskrit texts we discussed earlier. Within these passages, we find the tale of Lot. To summarize, is a story about 2 angels that travel to the ancient and infamous city of Sodom, where they encounter a man named Lot, who shows them great hospitality by letting the 2 angels rest at his home for the night. Because of such a kind gesture within a city known for its rampant sin, the angels warn Lot of the coming divine judgment to be had upon the people of Sodom, and tell him to take his family far away from the city. At first, the family is unwilling to believe the so-called angels, but the next morning, the angels hasten Lot and tell him to take his wife and 2 daughters into the nearby mountains where they will be safe. Later, judgment really had come to pass, and the city, as well as its people, had been completely destroyed by fire and brimstone. Could it be that the people of Sodom had experienced the same kind of advanced technology as that of Hindu people of ancient India? It's a very interesting take on it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. They create other universes. One theory suggests that the matter that is pulled into a black hole is eventually spewed out the other side in the form of a Big Bang. A Big Bang is the current go-to of how our universe began. This theory would mean that for every black hole in existence, there is another universe on the other side. We would live in a multiverse, an infinite amount of universes, which themselves are continually creating the new or next generations. Lee Smolin, a theoretical physicist based at Canada's Parameter Institute for Theoretical Physics, has stated that when a star collapses into a black hole, it very quickly squeezes down to infinite density and time stops. This is based on the concept of general relativity. What Smolin suggests is that the stopping point can be deferred using quantum mechanics, and rather, the star collapses to a certain extreme density and bounces back. This bounce causes an expansion, and this expansion becomes a new universe. The theory is based loosely on how nature reproduces itself, a cosmological natural selection. If you think about it, this theory sounds plausible. Think of a woman creating a child inside her. The woman consumes food, which is matter. This matter is absorbed by her body and used as energy. This energy is then used to create her child, a new life. Our creation just has an extremely long birth. The rebirth of our own universe. This theory shares similarities with our last point, and based on a concept called the Big Bounce. Similar to an accordion being played, contraction-expansion. The birth of our universe and black holes share something in common. The singularity that we spoke of in the introduction. A place so infinitely dense that we cannot even comprehend, let alone understand it. Both share similarities in that they are a place where all its matter lies. What if all the black holes in our universe slowly merge together and eventually consume all matter and light in the universe? That singularity would theoretically hold everything that ever existed within it. If that is the case, then our black hole's singularity, on having no more matter to consume, could blow out our dead universe and give life to a new one, our own universe being continually recycled forever. It sounds like a beautifully natural solution to the theory of how our own universe was created, and is a slight spin on our last point. They are the hiding place of highly advanced civilizations. We know that our own civilization seems to find it impossible to live without our precious fossil fuels, but we like to think that our universe is vast enough that at least a handful of civilizations took the correct path, and were forever striving to harvest their own natural resources, without endangering their environment and its people. This civilization would be Type 3 or more, on the Kardashev scale. The Kardashev scale is the method of measuring a civilization's level of technological advancement, based on the amount of energy a civilization is able to use. Planet Earth hasn't even hit Type 1 yet. For the subject matter to even be possible, there would need to be a black hole the size of our own solar system. The reason for this is that the surface of a black hole becomes less extreme the larger the black hole is. This supermassive black hole would have a large enough stable area within the event horizon to hold an entire planet within, and this would orbit the central singularity without being torn apart. There is a particular black hole that is suitable for this type of scenario, a Resner-Nordstrom black hole, which is both charged and rotating. Russian cosmologist Evgeny Dokoshev hypothesizes that beyond the event horizon in this stable area, a planet would be capable of lying in a normal state. This planet would receive all its energy and life-sustaining needs from the illumination of the singularity. It would also be the perfect place to hide from other, less evolved or war-driven species, like us. They transport matter to another part of space-time. Let's say the black hole is like a wormhole, similar to what's seen in Star Trek and Interstellar. The idea of covering vast amounts of distance in a fraction of the time is an appealing concept. If space-time was a sheet of paper and we were trying to get from one side to the other without crossing the entire sheet. A wormhole folds the paper until both points meet and punches through one point to the other instantly. What science fiction fails to mention is that we may not know where we end up at any given time. Black holes may be in a constant state of flux, changing their direction. We may never be able to control where we end up. As you previously heard, this theoretical black hole is a passageway to another part of space, or even another universe. This new theory is based on a concept called looped quantum gravity, but let's call it LQG for short. It merges quantum physics and general relativity in an attempt to fix some of their incompatibilities. Under the LQG parameters, a black hole does not have a singularity. When numbers were crunched by researchers from a university in Uruguay, they found that when energy was pulled in and squeezed, it suddenly loosened its grip, as if a door was opened on the other side. LQG black holes are less like holes and more like passageways or tunnels. Tunnels to either different parts of our universe, or even different universes altogether. It sounds amazing, but I don't know who would want to be the first one to try it out. Nowhere, it's a hologram. Physicists and scientists alike cannot agree on whether our black holes are three-dimensional monsters or flat, two-dimensional surfaces projected in 3 dimensions, like a hologram. The fact is that we are limited to viewing some of these objects from millions of light years away, and only from one approach, one angle of view. It sounds like an impossible task. Just let your mind accept the notion that our cosmos does not lie in 3 dimensions, but rather 2. This would mean that when matter and light are pulled into what we see as black hole, is in fact getting stuck in the gravitational fluctuations of the 2-dimensional surface. This analogue was used. Imagine a basketball loop. The ring is the event horizon, and the net is where all matter falls and disappears. Now push the net up to the ring to make it a flat, 2-dimensional surface. There is no inside, and there is no other side. There is a planet that is darker than coal. Would you believe that there is a planet that is darker than coal? Well, there is. TRES 2b is 750 light years away from our solar system. And there it lies, a gaseous Jupiter-sized world that astronomers have called TRES 2b. Despite its unassuming name, this exoplanet holds the honour of being the darkest known exoplanet out there, reflecting less than 1% of the light that hits it. Jupiter, with its red and white clouds, reflects over 30% of the light that reaches it from the Sun. TRES 2b has no reflective clouds, and what's more unusual is how close it is to its parent star. Whereas the Earth is about 95 million miles away from the Sun, TRES 2b is only about 3 million miles away from its star, which heats its atmosphere to a raging 980 degrees Celsius, and gives the gas giant a very faint red glow, much like the coils on an electrical stove. Despite this, however, the exoplanet is darker than the darkest acrylic paint you can buy at the store. In fact, it appears to be darker than nearly anything else, with perhaps the notable exception of a black hole. Scientists aren't sure how such a hot planet could be so dark, but one promising theory posits that light-absorbing chemicals like vaporized sodium and potassium or gaseous titanium oxide are large components of its atmosphere. There is a planet that has winds blowing at 7 times the speed of sound. Approximately 65 light years away, there is another hot Jupiter-like planet with the equally unassuming name of HD 189733b. Like TRES 2b, this large gas giant is about 30 times closer to its parent star than Earth is to the Sun, and is well over 1000 degrees Celsius. There is a twist, however, as this planet orbits its star in only 2 days, resulting in windstorms unlike anything we can imagine here on Earth. With winds that blow up to 54,000 miles per hour, any would-be visitor to this exoplanet would instantly get caught up in a sickening spiral around the planet. For context, some of the fastest fighter planes in human history have been able to get up to 44,000 miles per hour at their peak speeds, and the sound of speed is a little under 770 miles per hour. Now, not only are the winds terrifying and dangerously close to inconceivable, but it's what the wind carries with it that pushes this planet into the realm of being surreal. As the atmosphere of the planet contains large clouds filled with silicate particles that are constantly exposed to massive heating and wind, it's more than likely that this exoplanet features a perpetual sideways rain of molten glass. This hazy, blow-torched planet is a victim of its proximity to its own parent star, and is one of the strangest gas giants in the cosmos. There is a planet that has burning ice. GJ436b is a Neptune-sized exoplanet orbiting a small and relatively cool red star, approximately 30 light-years away from Earth. This exoplanet is home to an apparent paradox in the form of burning ice. Yes, ice that is so hot it can vaporize a human being on contact. Typical gas giants are largely composed of hydrogen and helium, and have significant quantities of methane in their atmospheres. However, this exoplanet's size, density, and atmospheric content indicate to astronomers that GJ436b is anything but typical. Instead, it has far less methane and far more carbon monoxide than it should. Despite carbon monoxide being scarce above certain temperatures that the planet regularly reaches due to its close proximity to its star. The only way that such a large amount of carbon monoxide could be present on the planet was if somehow there was also water present. That was when scientists realized that GJ436b is one of the strangest things in space that we have ever discovered. Ultimately, astronomers think that the planet contains a large amount of an exotic form of water ice that they have dubbed Ice-10, on top of a dense and rocky core. So then one has to ask, how does water remain solid like ice at these high temperatures? Astronomers say the immense gravity of the planet is powerful enough to compress the vaporizing water in the atmosphere and prevent it from reverting to its liquid form, trapping it as a solid on the planet. But the temperature is still incredibly high due to the star it orbits, keeping the water on the planet in an icy yet boiling form. How incredible is that? The two-faced hell world, Gliese 581c. Gliese 581c is a type of exoplanet called a super-Earth, meaning that it has many of the same characteristics that Earth has, such as being dense and rocky, as well as being within the habitable zone of its parent star. What makes it super is the fact that the exoplanet has a mass about 5.5 times that of Earth. 581c seemed, at first blush, to be a great candidate for life, but the more scientists learned about this distant planet, the more they began to realize what a hellish landscape it really is. Firstly, the planet is tidal locked, meaning that it always presents the same side of the star that it orbits, like our moon does to the Earth. This results in a planet split in two, with one half constantly beaten by the heat of its parent star, and the other half submerged in perpetual subarctic darkness. Gale force winds would perpetually surge from the hot side of the planet to the cold side, causing regular windstorms. The sky would be a bloody crimson colour due to the red dwarf star the planet orbits. If life similar to life on Earth can be found on this planet, it will only be found on the thin strip of land that forms a sort of meridian between the two extremes of the climate. This stormy, twilight area could potentially house life, although it would likely look quite different from what we are used to. Should plants evolve on the planet, they would possibly be pitch black in colour, so as to most efficiently absorb light in their dim, infrared-rich environment. Gliese 581c would doubtlessly be a strange planet to land on. The Gargantuans, stars and black holes. The universe has produced some truly baffling planets, but the undefeated champions of the incomprehensible are without a doubt mighty stars, and their undead counterparts black holes. Both stars and black holes can take on nearly immeasurable sizes and are often some of the most powerful makers of change in the universe. Our own star, the Sun, is a massive ball of fiery plasma that is about 109 times the diameter of Earth and about 330,000 times the mass. The largest star yet known is called Stephenson 218, and it makes our Sun look like a pebble, clocking in at 1,075 times the diameter of our own home star. That makes the volume of Stephenson 218 10 billion times greater than the volume of our Sun. If this massive star took the place of our own, every planet up to and including Saturn would be completely engulfed by its flames. But what happens when a star that big dies? While there is a chance it can become like the recently discovered black hole called J2157. This monster of the dark is about 34 billion times as massive as our own Sun, and is 8,000 times larger than the so-called supermassive black hole at the centre of our Milky Way galaxy. This ancient behemoth consumes an average of one sun-sized star a day, and has been raging in our cosmos for around 12 billion years, consuming all within its massive reach. The crazy thing is that research has shown that there is no indication that it will ever stop. ISS live feed mystery. This next one is something we picked up from a UK newspaper in April of 2020. It hasn't gained much attention, but we thought it was interesting and worth a look. The strange anomaly was spotted on the International Space Station live feed on April 23, 2020 by Drew Jones, who has been watching the feeds religiously for the past 2 years. He claims this is the first time he has ever seen anything like it, and thinks it might be a genuine UFO. Jones later uploaded the raw footage to his YouTube channel, Mad Cat Mysteries, and understandably it sparked a bit of a debate. Take a look at the footage and look out for the orb-like light that travels on screen right to left, and then appears to change direction before reappearing from the left and disappearing. Take a look. Now we have to agree that looks strange. It's obviously travelling at speed, although we are unsure whether the larger looking orb that comes back into view from the left is the same orb, changing trajectory, or it's a different one. There could be a perfectly plausible explanation for both orbs, and it has been suggested is just space junk. However, Jones, who would be familiar with what space junk looks like, is adamant it is the strangest thing he's ever seen in the 2 years he's been monitoring the live feed.
One thing that I do know, however, is that space junk does not change trajectory. And if whatever this is one object, then it can't be space junk.
Others believe it could be a satellite or ice crystals, both of which are possible but unconfirmed explanations. If any of you have any idea what it could be, we would love to hear in the comments section, as so far there doesn't seem to be a satisfactory explanation. So for now, we can call this one a UFO. Google Earth exposes stranded UFO docked in Antarctica waters. In April 2020, UFO and alien conspiracist Scott Waring claimed to have spotted a triangular alien aircraft buried under ice and snow on Lavoisier Island in the Antarctic region. Scott claims he spotted the triangular-looking craft while using Google Maps, and he thinks it's possibly a TR-3B, an alleged secret US surveillance aircraft said to have been developed under a black project. It's worth pointing out that the only evidence for such an aircraft is based on numerous reported sightings of a mysterious flying triangle aircraft over Antelope Valley, an area of desert in Southern California. The TR-3A was said to be a subsonic stealth spy plane with a flying wing design, and its successor was the TR-3B, allegedly a state-of-the-art space plane that used a top-secret gravitational shielding engine called the Magnetic Field Disruptor. Although many believe the physical description of the MFD engine is not possible, and likely wouldn't be able to fly. However, there are still those that believe in its existence, and over the years this has been fueled by conspiracy theorists. Take a look at the Google Map image and see what you think. The most likely explanation is that after years of a warmer climate, the ice and snow have melted, revealing a rock formation below. Only time will reveal what is really under all that snow and ice. SpaceX mystery as UFO appears on Starlink live feed. This next UFO came into view on SpaceX's live Starlink feed, but mystery surrounds what it was after it was edited out of the original footage. The mysterious moment took place during the launch of SpaceX Starlink from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida on the 19th of March 2020, when a new batch of 60 Starlink satellites were launched into orbit in an accelerating campaign to deploy a globe-spanning network of internet relay satellites. However, space enthusiasts who were watching the live footage noticed a mysterious UFO appearing near the Falcon 9 rocket soon after the deployment of the satellites. It raised discussions of conspiracy theories as SpaceX apparently cut the live feed seconds after the huge cigar-shaped object came into view. Take a look. The original footage was shared online, and it caused a bit of a stir. The object appeared to be cigar-shaped and seemed to become brighter and bigger as it hovers in space, and viewers were concerned at how close the rocket came to the unexplained object. It later emerged that the launch feed was cut every time an unexplained object came into view, and the fact that neither SpaceX or NASA have offered explanations for this has only fueled the conspiracy theories. This one rumbles on, and speculation will continue until a definitive answer is given. What's your thoughts? On April 9th, 2020, at around 7:40 PM, Luke Craddock's wife was outside in their garden in the Bath area of the UK when she called him to come and witness what she was seeing falling in the sky. At first they assumed it was an aeroplane due to the white vapour trail it left behind, although given the situation at the time, very few aircrafts were flying. However, it looked like it was falling at a very slow speed rather than moving away from them, and continued to fall for nearly 10 minutes, when the white vapour trail changed to thick black smoke. Puzzled by what they saw, Luke posted the footage online, and a friend came forward and claimed to have also seen it, although he lives over 100 miles away in London. The Craddocks were expecting the strange object to make the news and were surprised that there was no mention of it in the local paper or on Facebook. They put this down to the strict lockdown we are experiencing and the fact no one would have been out and about. The only possible explanation is that in April the sky was quite active with meteor showers, although generally these pass quite quickly, and this did not. The Craddocks are still trying to find out what exactly they witnessed, so if any of you have any idea what it might be, or even witnessed it yourself, we would love to hear in the comments. Mexican volcano. Popocatépetl is Mexico's largest volcano and the second largest in North America, and has long been the subject of conspiracy theorists who believe it's used as an alien city. This theory has been compounded in recent weeks when a white object was filmed. The sighting was made on webcams which constantly monitor the 5,426 meter tall volcano, nicknamed El Popo. Take a look. That is pretty impressive. The footage has convinced conspiracy theorists that not only is it proof of aliens, but also proof that the Mexican government is in the know, and are in contact with the extraterrestrials. This is just further proof that the alien base does exist, and that the aliens living there have very large spacecrafts, according to the theorists. This is not the first time strange anomalies have been seen on the webcams, as on several other occasions UFOs have been seen exiting and entering the volcano. A similar video emerged last year that showed a bright, curved light making its way up the side of the volcano before suddenly disappearing. We agree these appear to be strange anomalies, but whether they are crafts flying in and out of an airbase, we'll leave up to you. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. The Oort cloud. Comets are some of the most brilliant spectacles that we can observe from Earth. These balls of ice and minerals often have brilliant trails that can be seen by terrestrial observers if such a comet passes close enough to Earth. But have you ever wondered where those comets came from, and where they go when they complete their orbit around the Earth? This is a mystery that scientists are still mostly unable to answer. Some comets with shorter orbits closer to our solar system are believed to be from icy interstellar objects called scattered disks. However, this only accounts for a small fraction of known comets. The origins of those with longer period orbits, as well as some short period orbit comets, like the famous Halley's Comet, are not nearly as clear. There is one plausible theory that is thought to be the genesis of all these long period comets. The genesis is known as the Oort cloud, named after Dutch astronomer Jan Oort. Oort expanded upon and corrected the theories of Estonian astronomer Ernst Öpik, and determined that because of the sheer amount of volatile elements and chemicals that exist on comets, that they had to have formed in some sort of cloud of material on the outer rims of the solar system. The loose gravitational force of the Sun would keep these icy objects in this cloud-like formation. When an object comes close enough to the inner rim of the cloud, it is pulled by the gravity of the Sun towards our solar system, thus getting launched into orbit. Some comets, such as Halley's Comet, get stuck within a close orbit of our solar system, thanks to the happenstance of the gravitational forces, and become short-period orbits of our solar system. Others, such as the Hale-Bopp Comet, can take thousands of years to complete an orbit. All of these objects, and billions and trillions more, exist, supposedly within the Oort cloud. They theorize this cloud is actually made up of the remnants of the protoplanetary disk that surrounded our Sun until it formed into the planets we have today. Matter that did not get pulled together enough to create planets. Scientists estimate that the Oort cloud could be 5,000 to 100,000 AU thick, or about a light year in thickness. There's that much space that just has floating ice remnants ready to become comets, if it exists. The big catch here is that scientists have no idea if the Oort cloud actually exists. On their official NASA website, they refer to the Oort cloud as scientists' best guess as to where so many comets come from. This cloud is so far from Earth and the rest of our solar system that we currently have no way to detect its presence. The closest satellite we have to the Oort cloud is Voyager 1, which is currently travelling at nearly 1 million miles per day towards the location of the Oort cloud. Unfortunately, because of how far the Oort cloud is, Voyager 1 won't reach the very beginning of it for another 300 years. If it were to try and travel all the way through, it would take approximately 30,000 years to reach the end of the outer cloud. However, we won't ever get to see it get that close, as Voyager 1 will lose power and contact with Earth by 2025, meaning we will have absolutely no way to know what is out past the point we lose contact. Until we find a way to get a satellite to travel far and fast, and that is strong enough to communicate with Earth, we will likely continue to be in the dark about the existence of the Oort cloud. Signals from deep space. The Earth is constantly being barraged with light radiation from all over the universe. using radio wave observatories such as the Very Large Array in New Mexico or Merlin in the United Kingdom. Astronomers are constantly studying the sky, listening to these emissions from across the universe. While many wavelengths help us decipher and uncover the universe around us, one immensely powerful type of radio wave emission is almost completely shrouded in mystery. These are known as fast radio bursts, or FRBs for short. FRBs are radio waves that last only a few milliseconds, but that have extremely energetic radio frequencies. These range from 500 MHz up to 7 GHz in energy, or about 500 million times the energy emitted from our own Sun. FRBs originate far away from Earth, with most points of origin being billions of light years away. Because of this massive distance, scientists are unable to identify just what generates these massive signals from deep space. Being able to understand the origins of these massive, far-travelling light waves could unlock incredible secrets and knowledge about our universe. But without methods of detection, we are left completely in the dark. Just what might be causing giant bursts of energy? Many scientists speculate that FRBs have natural origins from high-energy celestial bodies that are far-flung from our own galaxy. FRBs are most frequently observed in singular bursts, meaning that whatever they came from experienced a massive surge in energy that emitted the signal initially. Such an extreme event would theoretically be generated by collisions of massive objects, such as neutron stars colliding with black holes, supernovas, or other neutron stars. Although such a scenario is possible naturally, scientists currently have no way of testing if this is the case, or if something much more complicated and advanced might be at play. Scientists theorize that there could be a constant barrage of FRBs actually hitting our planet every day, but we just don't have the technological instruments to detect them. And we are still learning new things about FRBs every year. In 2015, McGill University graduate student Paul Schultz made the groundbreaking discovery that FRBs could repeat. He pinpointed the signal FRB 121102, which had first been detected in 2012, confirming for the first time that FRBs have the possibility to reoccur. This opened up a world of new possibilities for the origins of FRBs, including some that may involve alien intelligence. Some scientists believe that FRBs could have artificial points of origin, created by a super-intelligent alien species who have figured out how to harness much higher energies than anyone on Earth could control. In March of 2017, scientists from the Harvard University released a theory that said that FRBs might be energy leaks from giant planet-sized transmitters. By creating a powerful solar array 2 times the size of Earth, aliens could harness the power of nearby stars and focus that energy towards huge intergalactic solar sailors. These solar sailors could theoretically carry large numbers of passengers on rapid intergalactic routes to other stars, planets, and potentially even galaxies. It's astonishing to think that FRBs may just be the remnant energy of an intergalactic superhighway. But until astronomers are able to detect precise origins for these signals, we as humans will be left to speculate on this celestial mystery. Dark matter and dark energy. One of the most well-known mysteries of the universe, at least by name, is that of dark matter and dark energy, the most elusive substances in the universe, which we've talked about before. We are only aware of the presence of this phenomena because of their effects on gravity. Otherwise, we have no idea what these two things are at all. Since many people are aware of this mystery, I want to take a second to debunk some of the most common misconceptions about dark matter and dark energy. First and foremost, dark energy and dark matter are not the same thing. Dark matter is all the matter that scientists are unable to detect through current technological means. This includes both baryonic or normal matter that might be difficult for scientists to detect, and non-baryonic matter, which is matter that isn't composed of baryons or atomic particles. However, baryonic matter is thought to make up only a small fraction of what dark matter actually is. Most dark matter is currently completely unobservable and thought to be non-baryonic. as it does not interact with known physical particles and radiation the way baryonic matter is observed to. Many believe this matter is composed of WIMPs, or weakly interacting massive particles. Those are proton-sized particles with extremely dense masses that supposedly hardly interact with any other particles around them, making them difficult to detect. According to astronomical observations, dark matter makes up roughly 72% of the universe. Yet all of this matter is completely undetectable. Dark energy is the supposed energy that has increased the expansion of the universe, and is thought to comprise the majority of our universe, making up approximately 68% of it. Unlike the name might suggest, dark energy is not something tangible like electricity, but more like a force such as gravity. Unlike dark matter, which is a bit better defined, dark energy is only known to be the driver of the accelerating expansion of our universe. In 1998, the Hubble Space Telescope made this observation while observing a supernova from early in the universe's life. Astronomers realized that the universe back then was expanding much slower than it is observed to be expanding today, which at the time was a completely astounding result. It completely contradicts our known natural laws of physics, suggesting that this special type of energy is able to operate outside of those normal bounds, or even that our theory of gravity may be inaccurate. Aside from this information, scientists are almost completely in the dark about the properties or the actual existence of dark energy. Scientists cannot even begin to make headway on what dark energy is, because there is no current way to discern its existence. With so many questions to answer, how are astronomers trying to chip away at the problem of dark energy and dark matter? In the case of dark matter, scientists are trying to utilize groundbreaking detection methods that search for minuscule dense particles. In November 2017, researchers at Brown University unveiled a new experiment for detection that involves utilizing superfluid helium to detect these elusive particles that give off astronomically tiny amounts of energy. If successful, scientists may be able to take their first crack at what exactly makes up dark matter of the universe. Dark energy proves to be more difficult, as it's not necessarily a substance that can be observed. Scientists, at best, can run tests on their theories using calculations and educated speculation. Some believe dark energy to be a kind of fifth element, or quintessence, being a fifth fundamental force alongside strong interaction, weak interaction, gravity, and electromagnetism. Others think the force points to a cosmological constant, as originally theorized by Albert Einstein. Whatever the answer may be, it's rather daunting to comprehend that the universe that we are currently able to see and interact with only accounts for a small 5% of the universe. It makes you appreciate our existence on this earth just a little bit more. Is our universe a simulation? Simulation theory is the idea that our world, or even our entire universe, exists inside of a simulation, and that none of us are truly real. Since its popularization from the movie The Matrix, society has often been fascinated with the possibility that we live inside a simulation. While it may have started out as a science fiction, a multitude of scientific studies have begun to take this question. This endeavour has proved to be rather controversial, as evidence for and against this theory of simulated existence has piled up over the years. So for now, we will lay out what we have learned and leave formulating the answers to you. In the case of our universe being a simulation, scientists have made a number of groundbreaking discoveries that open up the possibility that our universe is in some way simulated by a higher power. In 2012, Professor Silas Bean from the University of Bonn in Germany unearthed the similarities between the properties of a simulation and the properties of particles in our own observed universe. Bean says that Greisen, Zeta-spin Kuzmin cutoff illustrates a fundamental limit on the energy that particles can have, which would have to be the case for simulated particles. With a substantial amount of documentation of this phenomena, Bean believes that this could be a piece in the puzzle for revealing the universe as a simulated environment. On March 7, 2015, a debate was hosted by Neil deGrasse Tyson at the American Museum of Natural History in New York to discuss the possibility of the universe being a simulation. During this debate, Professor James Gates from the University of Maryland presented astounding findings regarding the simulation of the universe. While studying the mathematical equations that make up our current understanding of string theory, Gates found what appeared to be computer codes within these equations. According to Gates, this was a special kind of computer code that corrects errors that happen within computer processing, and are a fundamental part of the code of internet browsers today. The presence of these codes was shocking in the midst of superstring theory equations, because it suggested that within the fabric of our very universe, within the vibrating strings that supposedly regulate it all, there exists computerized codes that keep things in check. Since the discovery of these codes, numerous other studies have unearthed more within string theory mathematical equations. This is some of the most compelling evidence to date that our universe might indeed be a simulation. For the most part, past arguments against the idea that we live in a simulation have mostly been philosophical or metaphysical. This was until October of 2017, when a team of Oxford physicians used quantum physics to suggest otherwise. Hailed by some as confirmation that the universe was conclusively not a simulation, two theoretical physicists attempted to simulate the motion of quantum systems using a method called quantum Monte Carlo. This is essentially a method of simulating complex particle interactions by using random samples of the motions in these systems, since these motions are too minute to simulate directly and exactly. Their experiment found that as more particles were placed into the system, the simulation became increasingly unworkable. So unworkable in fact, that only a few hundred simulated electrons would have taken the computing power of more than all atoms of the universe combined. Thus, because the computing power needed becomes exponentially greater as particles are added to the simulation, they concluded that the universe could not be simulated. Since the release of this study, many have pointed out that if our world were simulated, we would not be able to necessarily replicate the environment and computing power needed to duplicate such a simulation. One of the physicists himself admitted that the computing power of the universe simulating us could be much more vast than our own universe. So although we have found the bounds of simulations within our own universe, we still do not have the conclusive idea as to whether or not our universe is simulated. And as we crawl deeper into the rabbit hole, we may become less and less certain if we exist in a simulation or not. What do you think? Intergalactic void. Our universe is composed of pockets of energy in space, dictated by the way matter expanded after the Big Bang. Through millions of years, certain areas became extremely dense with baryonic and non-baryonic matter, creating galaxies and galaxy clusters, while other areas become much more devoid of material. It is this natural process of random expansion that has created what are known as cosmic voids. In a cosmic void, matter of any kind is much less densely concentrated than the average area of the universe. The Millennium Simulator, run at the Max Planck Institute of Astrophysics in Germany, provides us with a simulated map of the universe's energy and matter distribution. Paired with studies and observations, one of cosmic background radiation, scientists have been able to discover these supervoids. These voids take up astronomical amounts of space and occupy the majority of the volume of the universe. But what may surprise you is that we in the Milky Way galaxy are living inside the largest supervoid known to science. The KBC void was first discovered in 2013 by astronomers Ryan Keenan, Amy Barger, and Lennox Cowie, thus granting its name. Through further study, the KBC void was observed to be a massive 2 billion light-years in size, larger than any other supervoid observed in our universe so far. This means where we are living right now is particularly devoid of energy compared to most of the rest of the universe. This is an area where even dark matter is relatively absent. But why could that be? Many questions arise about our supervoid that are still completely unexplained. Scientists are still unsure exactly why our region of the universe is so devoid of energy. The matter-power spectrum, as described by physicist Victor T. Toth, gives us a general understanding of how matter ends up distributed less densely in voids, but does nothing to explain the reasons why our cosmic neighbourhood is mostly vacant. It is especially curious that an area so devoid of matter would also be the only known place in the universe for life to have developed. Though maybe this explains why other stars in our cosmic neighbourhood have no signs of life. Are we the loneliest life forms in the universe? It could possibly be so. While questions plague our understanding of our place in the universe, cosmic voids might end up holding more answers to the secrets of the universe than we ever thought possible. The complete lack of matter throughout the majority of the KBC void makes it much easier to detect when matter actually is present. This means that if we were to try and find some way to detect dark matter in nature, there is almost no better place to be running those kinds of experiments than in our own supervoid. Our supervoid may also help clarify what dark energy is, as we can learn a lot about the way our universe expands by observing the behaviour on the rims of our galactic void. In a universe full of mysteries, it's almost reassuring to know that one of the best ways of finding answers might be starting in the void. In our solar system. This is a fairly easy one, because we already know from direct exploration that almost every location in our solar system will kill you instantly, except for certain parts of Earth, and even that's really just a matter of time. So, we'll be a bit selective here. If you would like to die by several different methods virtually simultaneously, Venus would be a good choice. Venus is sometimes referred to as Earth's very nasty sister planet. It's the second planet from the Sun, and nearly the same size and mass as Earth. And so, if Earth is inhabited, Venus should be as well. Except something went horribly wrong, and it's the so-called greenhouse effect. It looks pretty from a distance, but Venus will roast and fry and inseminate you instantly, because its surface temperature is well over 800 degrees Fahrenheit. It will also instantaneously crush you, because atmospheric pressure at the surface is about 92 times that of Earth. On top of that, it will also instantaneously suffocate you, since its atmosphere is almost entirely carbon dioxide, with trace amounts of nitrogen, and upper atmospheric clouds of sulfuric acid. The former Soviet Union launched 16 Venera probes to Venus, 10 of which landed successfully, and all of which were melted or crushed in periods of time, ranging from 23 minutes to about 2 hours. But much of what we know about Venus is owed to this Soviet program. Why this set of conditions exists has attracted a lot of attention, and the current explanations are fairly complex. Briefly, one consideration is that stars expand as they age, and early in the history of our own system, our Sun was smaller, and Venus was well within what is called the habitable zone. There was certainly abundant water on Venus at the time, because water is just about everywhere else in our star system. But as the Sun expanded and bodies of water vaporized, water vapor accumulated in the Venusian atmosphere, which created a heat trap. More importantly, carbon dioxide on Venus doesn't seem to be absorbed by the crust or lithosphere and turned into carbonates, because of the lack of the recycling of plate tectonics. And so it all ends up in the atmosphere, where it acts as a greenhouse gas. CO2 is also a greenhouse gas on Earth, even with our plate tectonics, because we are generating CO2 faster than it can be reabsorbed. Finally, it has been recently discovered that Venus actually has active volcanism, which means that at least the sulfur dioxide in the upper atmosphere and certainly many other gases are being replenished. Mars is another place that people seem eager to go to, but it will also kill you. The good news is that it is in theory possible to protect yourself there, although in practice, we don't really yet know how to do this. Mars is not as dry as we once thought, at least below the surface, but it's still extremely arid by Earth standards. There is of course the radiation as a result of the absence of a deflecting magnetic sphere shield, but there is also the deep space radiation problem that has to be solved long before humans ever reach Mars, or they'll all be corpses long before they get there. Then there's the low atmospheric pressure, about 1/100th that of Earth, due to the weak gravitational field. The lack of a magnetosphere allows radiation to split atmospheric molecules, which are heavier, into constituent atoms, which are much lighter and therefore have a much lower escape velocity. If you are somehow unprotected on the Martian surface, the result of this low atmospheric pressure, according to Pascal Lee of the Ames Research Center and SETI, is that your blood would fizz like a newly opened bottle of carbonated water, and this would kill you in seconds. Earth's atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, about 78% and 21% oxygen. Mars's atmosphere is almost entirely carbon dioxide, with almost no free oxygen. Anyone who goes to Mars will obviously have an ample supply of oxygen, and there are experimental technologies to create oxygen from the apparently abundant water near the Martian surface. But the fact remains that Mars will suffocate you unless you have a steady supply of oxygen. Unlike Venus, these considerations, along with the temperature and surface radiation, are problems that can be managed, although the technologies required are no small considerations. Venus cannot be managed, but Mars may be, and we will eventually find out. There are many and much more extreme planets and moons in our system, places we have no hope of ever sending a human to any time in our lifetimes. And then there are exoplanets, planets that are part of other star systems. We can't, of course, directly examine any of their characteristics, and in almost all cases can't even spectrographically analyze their atmospheres, but we can indirectly calculate their likely compositions and temperatures. Many of them may possibly be relatively pleasant, although this doesn't mean we could survive on them. But out of these exoplanets, where would be even worse? Well, there are a lot of them. Here are a few, and things get really rough. OGLE 2005 BLG 390LB. Referred to by Star Wars fans at NASA as Hoth, this super-Earth in the OGLE 2005 BLG 3901 star system, about 21,500 light-years away, is probably rocky, hence classified as Earth-like, and about 5.5 times as massive, and most likely has a thin atmosphere. The host star is probably a cool red dwarf, or possibly a white dwarf, and the planet orbits at a distance from its host star at anywhere from 186 million to 372 million miles. We of course have no idea what the planet actually looks like, but we can infer that with its host star as a red dwarf, and the distance between Hoth and its star, it is extremely cold there, because the temperature on the surface is probably about minus 369.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Pluto is actually colder, but this wouldn't matter to you if you were in either place, as you would shatter into tiny pieces in seconds. Calt 9b. On the opposite end of the temperature spectrum is Calt 9b, aka H9195689b. Discovered only in 2017 by two telescopes, one in South Africa and one in the US state of Arizona. It is an extremely hot gas giant, a hot or ultra-hot Jupiter. It's about twice the diameter and 3 times the mass of Jupiter, about 670 light-years from Earth, in the constellation Cygnus, and there are some extremely unusual things about it. First, it is tidally locked around its host star, which is twice as hot as our own Sun and 2.5 times more massive. This means it only presents one hemisphere towards the star. Second, its year, or orbit around its star, is equal to 36 hours in Earth terms, or about 1.5 Earth days. Third, it is in a polar orbit, which means that it actually orbits its host star around the star's poles rather than its equator. Fourth, it has an average temperature of 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to actually melt molecules in its atmosphere, which can only recombine after the atoms circulated through the atmosphere to its dark side. The fact that it even has an atmosphere is odd. NASA's Spitzer telescope showed that molecular hydrogen shreds into atomic hydrogen on Calt 9's bright side, and then recombines on its dark side, only to repeat the process again and again. There are some other known hot Jupiters that are hot enough for this to happen, but so far it's only been detected on Calt 9b. But it's safe to say, this is a good vacation destination if you hate winter. HD 189733b. This planet, discovered in 2005, is a Jupiter-sized planet 65.5 light-years away, with a rather pleasant and inviting blue tint. The star, H9189733, is located in the constellation Vulpecula. Since no one has ever seen it, there are all sorts of ways to envision it, and people have. Since it's so close, there has been significant and ongoing studies of its atmosphere, which appears to be rich in water vapor, oxygen, methane, sodium, potassium, carbon dioxide, and silicates, and this latter is actually what gives the planet its blue colour. There are a few things that make this planet extremely uninviting, regardless of how pretty it looks though. First, as expected, it is tidally locked with its star, HD 189733, and the temperature differential between the near and far sides creates winds of unimaginable velocities, up to 5,400 miles per hour, which is 7 times the speed of sound. Second, temperatures on the side that face the star can reach 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. Thirdly, the winds carry a rain of molten glass, which doesn't actually fall, but rather ravels sideways. This molten silica is what gives the planet its blue colour, rather than oceans, which gives our own blue marble its colour. Venus rains sulfuric acid, Neptune rains diamonds, WASP-76b, the next on our list rains molten iron, and HD 189733b rains molten glass. This is some pretty nasty weather. WASP-76b. WASP-76b is a gas giant with a mass about 92% that of Jupiter, in the WASP-76 planetary system, about 640 light-years away from us. It orbits so close to its star, WASP-76, at 0.033 astronomical units that its year lasts only 73 hours, and it's certainly tidally locked, so that one hemisphere is always facing WASP-76 and one is always in shadow. WASP-76b is so close to its star that it's essentially within the star's outer atmosphere. Visiting any place named WASP doesn't sound terribly appealing, but the name just comes from the UK-led WASP telescope system, or the wide-angle search for planets. WASP exoplanets are special for us right now because the wide-angle search for planets is ground-based, compared to the Kepler exoplanets, which are much further away and fainter. WASP exoplanets are close enough and orbiting stars bright enough so that we can get follow-up detailed studies. And this is why we know what we do about WASP-76b, and it's not a nice place. For one thing, its day side is greater than 4,535 degrees Fahrenheit, or 2,400 degrees Celsius, which is hot enough to atomize iron and zinc. The shadowed hemisphere is almost 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit cooler, which certainly creates ferocious winds of vaporized material. Spectroscopic observations by the Espresso instrument, part of the Southern European Very Large Telescope in Chile, indicates that at the frontier or terminator of the day and night sides, there seems to be an atmosphere of iron vapor that then condenses on the night side into a rain of molten iron. Something similar seems to be happening on OGLE TR56b, which seems to have clouds of vaporized iron, and COROT7b, which apparently rains re-solidified molten rock in the form of pebbles. But you wouldn't have to worry about that, because either on the dark side or the light hemispheres, the temperatures would kill you instantaneously. And on the day side, you would of course be vaporized, and on the night side, you would be immediately reduced to ashes by molten iron rain. So in conclusion, it's certain that there are probably an infinite large number of places in the universe that will kill you in infinitely unimaginable ways, largely due to temperature and atmospheric composition. These are just 5 of many thousands of planets that we know of. Without an FTL, or faster than light method of travel, we will never visit any of these, and so we will always be reliant on steadily improving observational technology to tell us whether we will ever know about any of these places. There is an infinitely large number of things we will never know about our galaxy, and the universe as a whole. The green-skinned children of Woolpit. Woolpit is a beautiful village nestled in the English countryside of Suffolk. Like many other settlements in Britain, Woolpit's history can be traced back for 2,000 years, and the origins of its name have been debated over the years. It was thought that there were links to the wool trade, yet the village was named in a document of 1005, long before the wool trade began. It was also thought that there were once wolf pits dug outside the village in order to protect its citizens. However, the most likely story is that it was named after the Earl of the Eastern Angels, Alf Kettle, whose name means wolf. Sometime during the 12th century, villagers were working in the fields outside of the village in order to bring in the harvest. On taking a break, they were surprised to see two strange children walking towards them from the tree line. The young boy and girl looked frightened, and their skin had a peculiar green tinge. Their clothes were made from strange materials, and they spoke in a new kind of language that the villagers had never heard before. The children were taken to Wilkes Hall, which was the nearby manor of Sir Richmond de Colne. After being given bread and other food to eat, the children became quite upset and refused to eat for several days, even though they were obviously hungry. Then, after seeing a servant carrying a tray of raw beans, the children took the beans and gobbled them down instantly. At the time, the story was verified by two independent sources. A man named Ralph of Coggins Hall, who wrote about the children in his books, The Chronicle of England, and another monk named William of Newbury, who also wrote about the incident which had reached him at his monastery in North Yorkshire. And although he lived far away from Woolpit, he was so convinced in the reliability of his sources that he wrote about the children in 1189 in his book The History of English Affairs. The two children stayed at Wilkes Hall for several weeks and continued to survive by eating the raw beans until they were finally persuaded to eat other things. Eventually, the green tinge on their skin faded and they began to look like normal human children. Sadly, the boy became sick and died, but the older and stronger girl thrived and was able to learn English. Coggins Hall wrote that the girl went on to describe the land that she and her brother had come from as a place of permanent twilight. She said everyone and everything in the land was green. She called it St. Martin's Land, and said that there was a huge river and a bright land could be seen on the other side. She said that she had been herding cattle with her brother when they heard bells and followed the cattle into a dark cave, only to emerge into bright sunlight, frightened and bewildered when the villagers of Woolpit found them. Able to integrate into her new surroundings, the girl became a servant at the manor house and later married a local man. So could the children have crossed over from another dimension through some sort of mysterious doorway? What do you think? The Beatles never split up. In 2009, a man calling himself James Richards set up a website page. On it he describes how he was transported into another parallel dimension, and there he was able to steal a cassette tape of a never-before-heard Beatles album, because in this other dimension, the Beatles had never split up. On his webpage, James recounts the story of his interdimensional theft. On the 9th of September 2009, he was travelling home to Livermore, California, from his friend's house in Turlock, when he realised that his dog was needing to take a toilet break. He was driving through a place called Del Porto Canyon, and the time was approximately 2 p.m. The dog ran off, chasing a rabbit, and James ran after it. The ground was uneven and full of rabbit holes. James soon tripped over and knocked himself unconscious. When he awoke, in a furnished room, his head was bandaged and he could hear traffic noises outside. This made him feel uneasy because he knew that the place where he had fallen was a rural area and away from civilization. There was also a strange electronic machine in the room that James didn't recognise. The door opened and his dog ran in, followed by a man. He introduced himself as Jonas and asked if James was okay. He said he had found him unconscious in a field with his dog. James replied that he was fine and asked where he was now. Jonas replied that his house was about 20 feet from where he had found James in the field. James said that this was impossible because there was no houses for another 20 miles around the place that he had fallen. Jonah then told James that what he was about to tell him would be incredible and that he probably wouldn't believe him. Jonah said the machine was a transporter that had brought James into a parallel universe. He said he often travelled to our Earth dimension, and after finding James injured and laying in the hot sun, he decided that the best thing would be to bring him back, although he wouldn't normally take people through the portal. They talked of many things, including music, where they discovered that many Earth bands also existed in the other dimension. They began to discuss the Beatles, and Jonas showed James some cassette tapes that he had because CDs didn't exist in his world. The names of several of the albums were the same, but some were new to James, and Jonas said that his brother had just been to one of their concerts, meaning in this world the Beatles were still together. James asked if he could make a copy of one, but Jonas got freaked out and said that James was not allowed to take anything back to his own world because it was not safe. Later, when Jonas was distracted, James was able to slip one of the tapes into his pocket, and he later returned to our world back through the portal. James ends this tale by making a plea for any other dimensional travellers to get in touch with him. The album is called Everyday Chemistry, and all 11 tracks of the album are available online. It's a mix of different elements from several of the Beatles' solo albums, with some new parts added in. So did James really stumble across a doorway to another dimension, or is he merely telling a tall tale? Carol McElhenney. Carol was travelling through San Bernardino in California on her way to attend a sheepdog trial. She saw a sign for Riverside and knew the place well, as her family's ancestry was rooted there. She decided that she would visit Riverside the next day to see her childhood home and visit her grandparents' graves in the cemetery. After staying in the area overnight, she returned to Riverside, but she found that everything had changed. The street where she had lived after leaving college was there. The house numbers were the same, but the bungalows looked different, and her house had disappeared completely. On the street where her grandmother used to live, the houses were all new, and there were no trees like Carol remembered. Her grandmother's house and the house next door, where her aunt and uncle had lived, were both gone. The street was full of modern-style houses, unlike the large Tudor-style house that she remembered her grandmother living in. Most troubling was the fact that Carol could not find the cemetery. She drove around the block a couple of times, but it was just a fenced-off piece of land, overgrown with weeds. Confused and upset, Carol began to drive around to see if she could find anywhere that was familiar. Both Riverside City College and Central Middle School looked the same, but University Avenue, which was the main street, now looked like a ghetto. There were no more shops, banks, and hotels like she remembered. Carol also noticed that the people looked scary, and she was afraid to stop. She felt as though getting out of the car would cause her to be trapped in this creepy other world forever. After a couple of unnerving hours, she decided to drive back. Once she arrived, she found that everything was back to normal. Several years later, Carol's father died, and as he had asked to be buried in the same cemetery as his parents, she had to return to Riverside. Once there, Carol found that everything had returned to normal. The cemetery was no longer a vacant plot. The streets and houses and University Avenue had all returned to normality. Was Carol, like she believes, transported to another dimension? She believes that if she had got out of the car, then she would have gone missing, unable to ever return to her own world. She thinks it was the same Riverside, but she had reached it by somehow going down a different dimensional path. The Professor from Venezuela and the Pear Child of Tenerife. It was a bright sunny day in the South American city of Merida, Venezuela, during the early 1970s. A university professor was returning to his car on the campus of the University of the Andes. The professor was seen by several eyewitnesses as he walked across the parking lot. He stopped a couple of times to talk to students about lectures and papers as he walked towards his car. He got into his car, and on seeing two of his students waving to him, he waved back before closing the door. The closing of the car door seemed to trigger something because the professor just vanished. It was as if he had stepped through a portal as the door closed. The unnamed professor has now been missing for over 40 years. His story was reported by a journalist in the well-respected Venezuelan newspaper El Tiempo. Could the professor have slipped into a parallel world, like the little girl in the next story? In 1905 in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands, a little girl was leading a flock of sheep back to her barn when she became tired and decided to take a nap under a tree. She was awoken by a tall, white being that led her by the hand to a cave which was full of other similar beings. In the meantime, her family had begun frantically searching for her, as she had been missing for several hours. They searched for the girl for many years after, but she had mysteriously vanished. The girl, after spending what she felt was a couple of hours in the cave, returned to her family. Her family was astonished to see her return several years after her disappearance, but looking exactly the same age as when she had left. Out of fear, her family hid her away, scared that she would be seen as cursed, and researchers have been unable to discover her identity. She became known as the Pear Child of Tenerife. Could this be proof that anyone travelling to another dimension will have to pay the high price of time bending? Where on their return, everything and everybody that they knew and loved could have aged or even already be gone. Lorena Garcia Gordo. For anyone who has ever seen the Gwyneth Paltrow movie Sliding Doors, they will know just how Lorena Garcia Gordo feels. Alternating between two different but parallel worlds, she believes that her life had gone down one path, only to awake one morning to find that it had actually gone down a completely different one. In 2008, Lorena posted a plea for help online. She said that she was 41 years old and was afraid that people would think she was psychotic, because she had felt like she had jumped into a parallel universe. She then asked anyone who had a similar experience to get in touch. Lorena said that she had awoke to find that lots of things were very different, but it was the small details that stood out at first. Her bed sheets were not the ones on her bed when she fell asleep, and there were clothes in her wardrobe that she couldn't remember buying. On leaving for work, she found that the car was parked in the wrong space. She hadn't parked the car there since her split from her ex-boyfriend 6 months earlier. She had worked at the same office for 20 years. She drove to work along what she felt was the same route, but when she arrived, the name on her office door was not hers. Thinking that she was on the wrong floor, she checked to find that she worked in a completely different office, under a different manager, but she couldn't remember ever changing departments. Panicking, she checked all over her ID, which proved to be the right name, picture, and address. So she went to visit the doctor to check that she hadn't been drugged or was suffering from amnesia. All the tests were apparently negative. Stranger was the fact that she had split up from her old boyfriend of 7 years, 6 months previously, and had been dating a new man for 4 months. She knew him and his son quite well, so she called his number, but someone else answered the phone, only to tell her that no one there answered to the name she gave. She was so convinced that he did exist, she even hired a detective to try to find him, but there was no trace of him or his son in that city. It turned out that Lorena was actually still with her boyfriend of 7 years, and in this world they had never split up. She has supposedly sought psychiatric help and been told that what she is experiencing is all stress related. So did Lorena wake up in a different dimension? If so, is this stress related or is she lying? Which Lorena is the real one? The one in the dimension or the one in the dimension that she claims to have travelled from?